Hi, everybody. I am not Matt Feldman. I'm Ann Price. I'm glad you could join us today. It's July 17th, 2025. It is Thursday, and we are super excited to have Amelia Kohm here to talk all about dashboards. I was telling Amelia, I already love the landing page. I love a good data viz, and I know you do too. So, Amelia, I'm going to let you take it away.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, Anne. So good to be with you all today. I hope it's lovely where you are. Um, so a data dashboard, I'll just start at the beginning by defining it in case anyone doesn't know, is a tool that provides a centralized means of monitoring, measuring, analyzing, and extracting meaning from different data sets while displaying information in an interactive, intuitive, and visual way. So I work with a lot of evaluation and strategic planning consultants who want to give their clients an sort of an everyday tool for tracking progress and for reflection. And that's what a data dashboard is. In this era where we hear a lot about data storytelling, a data dashboard allows a broader understanding of data sets because they allow you to explore the data, what you might call story finding. This broader understanding allows you to ask better questions of your data. And I think data dashboards are particularly important as we move towards greater use of AI to understand data. We need to understand the larger context to ask good questions of AI and thus get better answers. And data dashboards provide that broader view. So we're going to focus on these 7 tips for creating an effective data dashboard, sort of regardless of the application you use to create it. I'm a Tableau person. Of course, I don't know if Joe Travers is with us, but he's our resident Power BI expert. Of course, data dashboards include many types of data visualizations. So any good dashboards follows good data visualization practices when designing charts, graphs, and maps. But let's consider some tips specifically related to data dashboards. Okay, so let's go. Our first step is to collect information from our users. So your goal, of course, is to provide a clear and approachable way to facilitate the decision-making process for a specific audience. So you need to answer a few questions before you ever start designing a data dashboard. So most basically, who's going to be using this dashboard? How comfortable are they with numbers? How familiar are they already with the data that you're going to be showing? Do they need a general view? Do they need a specific view? Do they need both? I'd also suggest once you create a first or second draft of your dashboard that you beta test the dashboard with some of these intended users to see what works and what doesn't. Okay, number 2 is what decisions do these intended users need to make? Of course, this may seem obvious, but often dashboards are just designed to be informative or even just interesting without specifically considering how it will help users make specific decisions. Third is, what are the key questions that should be addressed in order for users to make those decisions? So, for example, the decision might be how to improve attendance of students in a tutoring program. So the question might be what subgroups of students are driving a downward or upward trend in attendance. Oracle's Nate Mayfield makes a distinction between interesting and actionable data. As Mayfield points out, you know when you've presented only interesting data when you get this type of response. Oh, cool, yeah, that's great to know. On the other hand, if you hear something like, oh, okay, now I can make a decision about this, then you've presented actionable data. The key to presenting actionable data is to ask specific rather than broad questions, and then design your dashboard to answer those narrower questions. So, for example, rather than ask, how many participants did we have in each of our programs this year? Ask, at what stage of our program do we see the greatest drop off in participation and among which subgroups? Or rather than ask, what are the most common outcomes for our participants after 3 years in our program? Instead, ask, At what inflection points do our participants tend to progress or regress? So these more specific questions will help to create a dashboard that provides actionable data. What comparisons are necessary? So there are three main types of comparisons shown on a dashboard. There's over time comparisons, there's comparisons in relationship to goals or benchmarks, and comparisons among subgroups. Context is really the key to understanding anything. So no data point has any meaning without first being put into some type of context. So to understand your data, you need to see it in relationship to something. So let's move on. Number 4 is device layouts. Where you're making a dashboard, you know, your users are going to be accessing it not just from computers, but phones and tablets. So you need to consider what devices they're going to be using and make layouts that are accessible with each one of those devices. So when showing data over time, you are going to need to consider what intervals are necessary. And that gets back to how often your users are going to be using the dashboard. Perhaps if your users are only going to be looking at the dashboard on a quarterly basis, they only need to see results by quarter. But maybe they need to see daily, weekly, or monthly totals or averages. It depends on the decisions they need to make and the specific questions the dashboard needs to address in order for them to make those decisions. Past use of data. So what are they used to seeing? Are they comfortable with that? Maybe you shouldn't go too far afield of where they are currently. For example, if they're used to seeing participant totals in a bar chart, maybe keep that chart, but add some interactive elements that allow them to see more with the chart. For example, allow them to see totals by age group or zip code. Once you have the answers to these questions, you'll be in a good position to start thinking about the design of your dashboard. So we're on to number 2, which is to keep key indicators front and center. So one of the most common problems of ineffective dashboards is too much data. Dashboard creators often include data just because they have it. They fill their dashboard with so-called vanity metrics, while the truly important metrics stay buried. So vanity metrics, if you aren't already familiar with that term, are exactly what they sound like, metrics that make you or your client look good to others, but do not help you to understand performance in a way that informs future strategies. So consider placing a few high-level and actionable metrics front and center on your dashboard. Here's an example of an overview page for a dashboard I created for a client that provides some key stats and charts. From this page, users can use those tabs at the top to navigate to other pages that provide more detailed disaggregated data and more detailed understanding in those particular areas. Similarly, this dashboard gives some key stats up at the top. And this one that I designed to look like a file folder gives KPIs and post-it notes, and then the user can navigate to more detailed charts by clicking on the tabs. So all numbers, as I've already discussed, need to be put into some kind of context. Users need to know, basically, is the number I'm looking at good, bad? Is it normally high or low? Could it be better? We can add this type of context by including comparisons to past performance, to other groups, and to benchmarks and goals. I think we've all seen data displayed like this, and it may seem impressive, but there's no context to really assess these numbers, so they're really just vanity metrics. Depending on the intended users and the decisions they need to make, we need to know, how did dollars donated compare to our goal? How did meals served compare to the need? How many people were turned away? Did we collect more or fewer codes than last year? Those are the kinds of questions that will generate responses that will inform our decisions. Um, let's revisit the dashboards I showed you earlier to see how they put numbers in context. So here we have some overtime comparisons. Again, some overtime comparisons. In the lower right, we have also comparisons between what's expected and what was actually funded. And again, previous year to date comparisons. Okay, my next suggestion is to limit filters or think Honda Civic. So unless you're designing a dashboard for a very particular and very wonky audience, it's best to go something akin to a Honda Civic dashboard rather than a Boeing 737 dashboard. Um, there's an urge you really should resist. Just because you can add a feature doesn't mean you necessarily should. Too many filter options can become confusing and overwhelming. This goes back to your audience and what questions they want to address. Only add filters that allow explorations around those questions, as I've already mentioned. In my opinion, this dashboard has too much going on. In addition to the filters at the top, you can use any of the charts to filter any of the other charts, and pretty soon you're going down a rabbit hole and getting really confused. Mock it up. So when I'm starting a new dashboard, I usually make some sketches to help me think about what charts to include, how I'm going to lay it out, how the pages are going to relate to each other, those kinds of things. And the problem is my sketches and handwriting aren't so good. I end up scratching out a lot and not being able to interpret it later. So now I use Canva whiteboards for my mock-ups, like this one that I created for a charter school dashboard. Canva, if you're not already familiar with it, it's a free tool. Of course, you can get more features if you pay. But the whiteboard feature, I believe, is free. And it includes large virtual canvases with the ability to zoom in and zoom out to see the whole thing. There's various whiteboard templates that can be easily adapted for dashboard design, or you can just start with a blank board. Of course, there's virtual post-it notes and lines and arrows and circles, so you can add annotations, and lots of free chart images that you can use as placeholders. So there's also an upload feature, so you can see sort of in the upper left here, I've uploaded a dashboard layout that I wanted to riff on for this dashboard. So it's just a great tool for mocking up a design. Apply graphic design principles. So data viz is like one of those unlikely couples. One partner is outgoing and a great storyteller. The other is introverted and sticks to the facts. So to make great charts, maps, and graphs, you need to sort of channel both partners in this odd couple, the artist and the analyst. So here are a few graphic design rules from the art world that you should apply to dashboards. The first is alignment. Alignment is essential for accessible design. Alignment orders and organizes your elements. It also creates visual connections and improves the overall readability of a design. Sort of like straightening up a messy room, aligning elements makes it easier for the viewer to navigate the design and to find the information they need. Also, a clean design, like a clean room, is more inviting. So to improve alignment, consider using left alignment with text in most cases. It's how we read and it usually works best. Only use right alignment or center alignment with a small amount of text, such as a title or a subtitle. Also consider using a grid to make sure that your elements are aligned. Many design and data viz tools have grid overlays. Some allow you to snap your elements onto the grid. In this dashboard, the charts, maps, titles, and text boxes are aligned both vertically and horizontally along a 4x3 grid. The result is a balanced and approachable look despite the multitude of charts and text elements. This composition uses both left and right alignment to create a sort of serene, symmetrical design. The designer emphasizes alignment by actually adding lines along some of the text elements. Okay, so another graphic design principle that is important to remember is to apply a visual hierarchy. So what do I mean by that? A hierarchy provides cues to help the viewer discern, one, what the key takeaways are, and two, what are the more minor details. So you create a visual hierarchy when you design elements, and by elements, again, I mean text, images, charts, according to their significance. So generally, the most significant elements are bigger and bolder, and the less significant ones, of course, are smaller and fainter. Here is a version of a data dashboard with many of the hierarchy cues removed. So take a look at that, because I can now show it to you with the hierarchy cues added back in. This is the original dashboard, and the other one I stripped away the hierarchy cues, and you can see it's much easier. Like your eye knows where to go, right? We can pick out the most important elements, get a general understanding of what this dashboard is all about, and then zoom in on more minor details. White space. So white space is a space between and around elements in a design. You can think of a single tree in an empty field versus a tree surrounded by other trees in a dense forest. If you want your viewer to focus on a particular tree, or of course, chart element, or title, clear the area around it. As I've already noted, too often we look for ways to pack more information into a dashboard or other type of data viz design. But when we do this, we lose the power of white space. So use white space to draw attention to your focal points, use white space to give the eyes sort of some breathing room. And as long as I'm mixing metaphors here, consider this. A busy, crowded design is like a cacophony in which none of the individual components can be fully appreciated. So delete unnecessary elements, or if the viz is interactive, make additional information available on demand by scrolling or clicking. Here's an example of dashboard that crowds information into one view, leaving little white space. As a result, it's difficult to determine the key information, and unless you're familiar with the data or highly motivated to extract meaning, you may give up on it pretty quickly. This dashboard, by contrast, uses plenty of white space to highlight focal points and not overwhelm the viewer. Okay, finally, steal like an artist. So in addition to applying graphic design principles to data viz, we should use another artistic strategy, which is stealing. Maybe you know Austin Kleon's book called Steal Like an Artist. In it, Kleon writes, quote, "Every artist gets asked the question, where do you get your ideas? The honest artist answers, I steal them. What a good artist understands is that nothing comes from nowhere. All creative work builds on what came before." Okay, so I presented to IC Chat a while ago, and I shared these sort of data viz gurus. And of course, you can learn a lot from them, and you can steal from them, get some inspiration from them. So that's one thing you can do, is kind of follow some gurus. Another great way to find ideas to steal is by checking out the work of featured Tableau authors on this website. Again, I am a Tableau person, so I'm a little bit biased, but I don't work for Tableau. But they do have lots of great information on their website, whether you use Tableau or not. And you can also sign up for their Viz of the Day just to get some daily inspiration. And since I'm talking to an AEA group right now, I just want to mention a particular type of data dashboard for evaluation that I call a living logic model. Logic models are, of course, hypothetical sort of best case scenarios. And as we all know, reality can bite. So Another problem with logic models is they often get more play during the planning and proposal writing phase of a project than during implementation. But I wondered, what if we could plug a logic model sort of into the real world? What if we could see how our plan is playing out in reality and make adjustments along the way? And you can do just that by creating a data dashboard based on a logic model. The current that animates such a living logic model is, of course, data. A living logic model compares theory to reality by showing progress to date. It also allows you to track the progress of subgroups and individuals. So it helps you to plan, to ask the right questions, and to make mid-course corrections. So this is a very simple example that I created. I've created more complex ones for clients. A living logic model, as I mentioned, shows progress to date. So as you can see, color saturation indicates the status of each component in the model. Darker shades indicate where there's been more progress. Lighter shades show where there's been less progress. And users can scroll over any component of the model to learn more about it. So let me see, I'll do this for you so you can see. This is the interact. So when I scroll over each one of these, I get a photo and more information about that component of the logic model. You can also add web links to those scrollovers. The user can also click on components to see what subgroups might be driving progress, stagnation, or regression. So like when I click on study skills reviewed here, the chart at the bottom is showing me the results of all the students in this tutoring program on the study skills score. Or no, that's a study skills score. This is our tutor mindset training. Anyway, you get the idea. In this example, the model filters to just one chart showing 10 individuals. But as I mentioned, I've created much more complex ones for clients. Here's an anonymized version of a living logical model I created for a client. Again, darker shades show where there's been more progress. Lighter shades show where there's been less progress. The gray shows where there's no data yet available to measure progress. And if you click on any of the components of the logic model, you're sent to a whole nother page that provides much more detail on that component. In this case, we can see how the average score for school experience, this is all based on survey results, has changed over time. We can also see results on the various indicators that comprise the school experience metric. And we can also filter the logic model to show the progress for a specific location. In this case, there was a survey conducted across a whole bunch of schools. So we can filter the logic model to show the results just for a specific school or other type of location or a specific year, like how were we doing last year compared to this year. Okay, I'm gonna bring this to a close by sharing some relevant resources that you might wanna check out. Data dashboards, as I mentioned, can be created with any number of tools. Here's just a sampling from an online catalog of DataViz software and online tools that you might wanna check out. Here's a list of free DataViz tools that are out there, some of which are great for creating data dashboards. As I mentioned, Joe Travers, I know, uses Power BI a lot. I use Tableau. Power BI is in the Microsoft world, but other programs like Tableau will connect to lots of different data sources if you want to be showing live data, or to spreadsheets if you don't want to be showing live data. Anyway, I'm happy to answer more questions about that at the end. For additional resources that I think are really cool, please check out the resources page on my website. And I hope, of course, that I can be a resource to you through DataViz for Nonprofits, which is my consulting business. I help organizations clarify the questions they want to answer. As I mentioned, I often work not directly with an organization, but with a consultant that's doing a strategic planning process or an evaluation process. And I build out a dashboard as part of the project. In addition to creating interactive data dashboards, I visualize data for reports and presentations, infographics, and I do workshops like this. Feel free to sign up for a free consultation on my website if you would like to just brainstorm about data that you're working with. I also have a blog called 60-Second Data Tips. I can, when we get to Q&A, I can put a link to my blog in the chat. But anyway, they're just really very brief data tips. If you sign up, you'll get them in your email each week, and it's kind of a fun way to up your data game over time. And finally, I just wanted to mention that I'll be talking about presenting data at a nonprofit learning lab webinar that's coming out real soon on July 31st. I'll be talking about how for data to make an impact, it must first take a journey through the human mind, and how understanding that the challenges of that journey helps us to present data so that the mind can actually see, grasp, remember, and apply it. I can also put the registration link in the chat in a moment. And I think, yeah, so that is it. I am happy to answer any questions that you have.
Awesome. Thanks, Amelia. That was amazing and inspiring. And I have 2 pages of notes myself. So we had a question in the chat about what program is the live logic model built on? Is that Tableau as well?
Yeah, I use Tableau
Okay.
to create living logic
Okay.
models. Yeah, but I'm
Awesome.
sure you can use Power BI or other platforms to do it.
Hmm. Awesome. And then Tenna wants to know what's the process for updating dashboards as new data comes in? Is it automated?
Yeah, that's such a good question. Yes, is the short answer. The longer answer is, so as I mentioned, you can plug connect a dashboard to either live data or not live data. So with Tableau will connect to Google Sheets, which is live data. It will automatically update every 24 hours, or you can manually update it if you want it more often than that. That's with the free version of Tableau. You can even do that. With the subscribed version of Tableau, and there's discounts for nonprofits, you can connect to, there's a very long list of data sources that you could connect to, all kinds of different databases. You may know that Tableau is actually owned by Salesforce, so of course it works quite well with Salesforce, but it works before it was owned with Salesforce. It was working with lots of different databases and does really well with those. So in that case, the data is very much real-time data. Interestingly, a lot of my clients, they kind of go into the project of creating an interactive data dashboard thinking, oh yeah, we'll connect to live data. And then they realize that they don't want to, because they want to have some control over their data. They want to be able to see what it's showing before it goes live, just in case they have some dirty data in there, things they want to correct. So, so sometimes they, very purposely go to sort of a manual refresh situation before they want to show it live. Particularly if they have it embedded in their website into like a very broad audience.
Hmm. Yeah, great. Kelly makes a point. Live data needs to be very clean. That's true.
Yes,
It
yes,
needs to take a
totally.
bath first.
Yeah.
Ashma wants to know, in sharing data and information, we often focus on what we want to share, not what our clients are able to consume. And I do remember I wrote a note about starting where your clients are, which is just great evaluation practice, even if it's not data visualization. But she wants to know, what is your process for educating your clients so they can use the data dashboards more effectively? Love that question.
Oh yeah, that's really, really good. Because yeah, I mean, I worry because I'm sort of done with my clients. after we create the dashboard unless they come back to me for tweaks. And actually, I should mention that, data dashboards like a living, breathing thing. It's whatever you create today is not going to be necessarily what the organization needs 6 months from now or a year from now. So often I'll do like maintenance contracts and I'll update it for them, just make little tweaks here and there, or I teach them enough Tableau that they can make the updates themselves. But in terms of getting them to actually use it, um, it's sort of two ways to go. As I mentioned, I often am working more directly with the consultant. So then it's more the evaluation consultant or the strategic planning consultant's job to work with them. Now they have this tool. So that person will sometimes make sure that the tool is used effectively. Otherwise, I really encourage my clients to build it into their regular staff meetings and their regular board meetings. I always build in a user guide into every dashboard I create so they know how to use it. Again, since the dashboards should be created around very specific, actionable questions, I try to make it clear in the design, like even like titling it with the question, um, so that it's really clear to them how they're going to be using it. Um, so I would say, just getting staff used to using it. I do think if the people who are using the dashboard are also the people entering the data into data system, they're going to be seeing the value of their data. I mean, I feel like a lot of organizations I deal with, that staff gripe a lot about entering data because it's kind of like putting data into a black hole. They don't know where it's going or how it's being used. But this is for the feedback loop. If they have access to the data dashboard, then they're going to see it. They may have more interest in quality data. They're going to start asking better questions, which
Mhm.
can lead to, better updates to the dashboard too in the
Yeah,
future.
awesome.